Okay, yesterday we worked with equations. Today we're going to be working with radical inequalities. Two things that you have to do with a radical inequalities. A radical inequality will look something like this. What's the difference between that and an equation? The less than sign or the greater than sign or something like that, right? That's what makes it an inequality. What?
Is that minus 10 or plus 0?
5x minus 10. One of the first things that you do is just like we solved with an equation, which means if I was looking at this as just as an equation, didn't I take this 3 and move it over to this side so that I isolated the radical? Okay, so do exactly the same thing. So 8 minus 3 is 5. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? Since I've isolated the radical on a side by itself, what do I do to both sides now?
Square it.
Okay, in this case, the index here is 2. So I can square both sides. So when I do that, I have 5x minus 10, because yesterday we talked about a radical that has an index of 2, and you square it, ends up with the same thing that's inside the radical without the radical. So if this was cubed and this was cubed out here, whenever I found the third root of something cubed, it'll be exactly the same thing that was inside the radical. Okay, and then I have less than or equal to, what's 5 squared? Can I solve for x now? Just like a normal equation, right? So I'd have 5x is less than or equal to 35. So x has to be less than or equal to 7.
Yep.
Correct? Okay. With radical inequalities, there's two things that I have to do. Yes, I will ultimately take this 7 and put it back into the original, so I'd have 3 plus 5 times 7 minus 10 is less than or equal to 8. So 3 plus 35 minus 10 is less than or equal to 8. So 3 plus, what's 35 minus 10? Less than or equal to 8. 3 plus 5 is less than or equal to 8. Is 8 less than or equal to 8?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So that part will work, won't it? Okay? The other thing that we have to worry about with an inequality, which we did not have to worry about with an equation, is the radical itself. And with it being a square root, we have talked about this before, can you find the square roots of negative numbers?
No.
Can't find the square roots of negative numbers, so you have to go through, and we have done this process before, take this radical, which was 5x minus 10, and it has to be greater than or equal to 0. Why? Because I can only find the square root, or an even root, of something that is positive. Otherwise, it is a negative root, which makes it imaginary, correct? Remember imaginary roots? Like the square root of a -4 became 2i. Okay? So now if I solve this, 5x is greater than or equal to 10, so x has to be greater than or equal to 2. So I have to make a comparison now. Up here when I solved it like this, the x was less than or equal to 7, correct? And down here, the x has to be,
Greater than or equal to 2.
so my final answer is the fact that x has to be greater than or equal to 2, and at the same time, x has to be less than or equal to 7. If I put in anything else, right? Okay, so if I said x was greater than or equal to 2 and x is less than or equal to 7, let's put in something that is not in between those. So we had 3 plus square root of 5x minus 10 is less than or equal to 8. Wasn't that the original problem? Let's put in something that does not exist between 2 and 7. So give me a number that's 9. Okay. So 3 plus 45 minus 10 is less than or equal to 8. So 3 plus square root of 35 is less than or equal to 8. Correct?
Yes.
Taking your calculator, what's the square root of 35? Since I can't find any other number, find me the square root of 35. It's about 5.9, but I need for you to find it.
5.916.
What's 3 plus 5.916? Is 8.916 less than or equal to 8?
No.
So do you see why my answer has to be between 2 and 7? We put in a 9. Is 9 between 2 and 7? No. What if I put in something less than 2?
4.
Like 1? Okay. That would make that a 1. That would make this a 5. That would make this a -5, wouldn't it? Correct?
-5 plus 2 is -2. A negative? I didn't do the square root again.
So I have 5 minus 10. That would be the square root of a -5. What's the square root of a -5? Yeah, it's an imaginary number. It would have an I in it, wouldn't it? Well, is that going to be less than or equal to 8? I have no idea because
2.236.
it's imaginary. It's what?
Never mind.
What'd you say? 2 point what?
236. 2.236.
Can I add 3 to 2.36i?
No.
No. So can I make this comparison at all?
No.
Nope. Okay. So my answer has to be between the 2 and the 7. Has to be. No doubt about it.
You have a mark board where you can write on both sides? No, it's just the back you can write. You can write on both sides?
It's worked so far.
You're not supposed to. Don't swear to me.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that earlier, but I was gonna ask.
How did this
Yeah,
girl look?
that's not so bad.
Hold it together.
So if I'm gonna solve this one, it's an inequality, correct?
Yes.
And then just like an equation, I wanna isolate the radical by itself, but remember I have a two-step thing here. Okay? The first step is to move the 2 over. So I'd have 9 minus 5x is greater than or equal to 8. Now, to get rid of this radical, the index here is 2, isn't it? That means I need to square both sides. So when I square this squared, what do I get?
9 minus 5x is greater than or equal to 64.
And 8 squared, 64.
Then you subtract 9.
Subtract 9.
Then you get 61, and then you...
60 what?
I don't know, it's something in the 50s, but I don't know.
It's 55. No, it's 59.
No, it's 59.
Oh my God. Okay, I am done with math. I can't do
And then when
this.
you divide by the -5, you have to flip the sign, I know that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that too, Debbie.
Okay, 64 minus 9 happens to be 55. Okay? Dividing both sides by the -5, and yes, somebody remembered, the inequality sign has to flip, and I get this,
Yep.
right? If I happen to put that back in, and have a -2 plus 9 plus 55 is greater than or equal to 6, so a -2 plus the square root of 64 is greater than or equal to 6. -2 plus 8 is greater than or equal to 6, right? -2 plus 8 is 6, is greater than or equal to 6. So does the -11 work?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
You don't always have to do 3 different problems, you can just check those ones with that one.
I was neither good.
Okay. Now the next thing I have to do is I have to worry about this thing being at least greater than or equal to 0, correct? So I take that radical, make it greater than or equal to 0.
Will always be greater than or equal to 0?
Yes, because it always has to be positive.
I put my good next to it.
So I have a -5x is greater than or equal to a -9. Correct? So is x has to be less than or equal to 9/5, which is the same as 1 4/5, isn't it? Right? So this is stating that x has to be less than or equal to a -11, and at the same time, x has to be less than or equal to 1 4/5. Are there any numbers that will fit in between here? Well, this is the bigger number, isn't it? Are there any numbers less than or equal to 1 4/5 that can exist between a negative 11 and 1 4/5?
Yeah.
So if you pick negative 5, is negative 5 less than or equal to a negative 11?
No.
But it is less than this, isn't it?
Yeah.
So negative 5 won't fit this answer, will it? So the only place that it'll be, because these are both less than, is I have to use all numbers less than or equal to a negative 11.
Why? Look at it.
Why?
Let's go off of what you first got, then, if that's the case. If that hasn't